So I've had the bike just over 3 months now. I know, I can't believe it, and done just over 2,000 miles, and it's fair to say I've got to know the bike, the good bits and the bad bits, and you'll be pleased to hear there's very few bad bits. It's mainly good. I absolutely love this thing. But we'll dive straight into the negatives. Okay, so the first negative has to be this indicator. Everyone picks up on it. And it's the cancelling of the indicator in particular, and it's a bit unforgivable that someone like KTM that have been making bikes for as long as they have, you know, and a bike that's so full of tech as this one can have such a gash indicator switch. I have gotten used to it. There is a technique to it, and I've got to admit it's no longer an issue for me. The technique is to essentially press down and forward at the same time. So you sort of press down at sort of a 45-degree angle, and then it works every time. And like I say, now I'm used to it. It is no longer an issue. But certainly that first week or two of riding, it used to drive me mad. Now there is a solution. KTM have listened, and on the one that came out in this year, 2023, January this year, the revised version of this bike, they have actually listened, and they've addressed that switch. So it's possibly a solution there if you can't live with it. It's a bit of an expensive one. I had a look at it. This switch gear from the new bike is about, I think it's 384 quid. It was when I looked at it. Part number wise, it's like 1 digit different, and looking at the wiring and stuff, it looks very similar. So there is a possible expensive solution out there, but trust me, you get used to it. Once you get used to the technique and you press down and forward at the same time, it's no longer an issue. On a similar vein, this bike does have self-cancelling indicators, but it takes so long. You need to be about 300 yards down the road before it cancels, which is great if you've left your indicator on. It stops you that embarrassment of driving down the motorway with the indicator on. But it doesn't work that well that you can turn your indicator on and forget about it because it cancels it like a car. It doesn't quite work like that. Like I say, you need to be a good few hundred yards down the road before it actually kicks in. I'll try and demonstrate that now. So I'm going to indicate here. I'm going to really make it obvious that I'm turning. Oh, fight the urge to cancel it myself. So you can see it blinking there. Still flashing. There, cancelled. So as you can see, it doesn't quite cancel it quick enough that you can just leave it to it. But it does save that, like I say, that embarrassment of, you know, doing a stint down the motorway with your indicator on. Okay, so the next negative for me is the keyless ignition, and it's not so much the keyless ignition itself. I've gotten used to not having a key, but it's the fact that it doesn't warn you when the key's not in range. Now, I don't know if you saw my other video. I did a pretty in-depth video looking at the keyless ignition system. And I mentioned in that I don't get a key out of range warning, and there was a few people left comments, you know, thank you for leaving those comments, about that they do get a key out of range error. So it got me wondering, so I came back out again and tested it again, and sure enough, I left the key at the side of the road, drove down the road and got a key out of range warning. First time I'd ever seen it. I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to take that video down because I'm talking bollocks. So then I thought, well, I wonder what the trigger is. You know, is it mileage? Was it time riding away from the key that triggered it? Because I'd never seen it just by moving the key away when it's been stationary. So went back, reset things, set off again, never saw the warning. You know, went back and did it 6 or 7 times, and each time going back, turning the bike off, turning the bike on, you know, resetting things and riding away, never saw the warning. So you do get a key out of range warning, but it's not consistent. So I think that's a bit rubbish. Okay, so something else I've noticed, which I don't know if it's just my bike and just the way the clutch is set up, whether the cable's not quite right. I don't think it is a problem. I think it's just the characteristics of this engine and this gearbox. But normally when a bike's in gear, if you pull the clutch, you can still pull it around as if it was in neutral. With this, you know, you're met with quite a bit of resistance. Don't get me wrong, you can still move it, but it's stiff. You put it in neutral and it freewheels like you'd expect, but generally with other bikes, I'm used to being able to just pull the clutch in and it's like it's in neutral, isn't it? But with this, it's a little bit stiff. So sometimes it gets a bit annoying when you just want to move it a couple of feet in the garage and you know, it's properly you have to put quite a bit of effort in because it's in gear, or you have to go to the effort of just finding neutral. It's only a silly little thing, but like I say, I want to be honest with you guys. I want to show you, what this bike, what's and all, and that's one of its negatives. Okay, got them out of the way. Let's get on to the positives, and I've got to start with the engine and the noise. Oh, it's the heart of this thing. It's the reason I think most of us own this bike, end up buying this bike, is that engine. The way that it delivers power is just stonking. It's awesome. And it doesn't matter whereabouts you are in the rev range, it just pulls like a train. Front wheel was coming up then, and it just puts a grin on your face. If this bike doesn't get your heart beating, then there's something wrong with you, honestly. Oh, and the brakes to match as well. The brakes are awesome. I don't know whether my front brake needs bleeding a little bit, because I do have to pull a little bit. It feels a little bit spongy on the top. But, in terms of stopping performance, these brakes don't half do the job. They match the performance, and you need them because the way this thing pulls out of a corner and the speed you approach the next corner is scary, really. The sound of this engine is awesome as well. I was a bit worried when I ordered it that I'd gone with the wrong option with the exhaust, but and I thought I'd probably end up pulling the baffles out, but no, it sounds awesome. I absolutely love the sound of it, and it's just that good balance of, it sounds proper meaty. It sounds like this thing could eat chainsaws, but at the same time, it doesn't bother me starting the bike really early in the morning when I go out for an early morning ride. It doesn't make your ears bleed on the motorway. It's just right, and then when you get on it on the lanes, it comes alive. It just all adds to the drama and the emotion of it. It's it's pretty wicked. What about comfort? Well, this bike is super comfortable, probably the most comfortable bike I've ever had. I must admit, the first few weeks I found the seat a little bit hard. I've got the ergo seat on here, standard height, heated ergo seat. I found it a little bit hard, but I don't know whether it's softened up or I've hardened up. But yeah, it's really comfortable now, and I don't notice it. Like I say, the first couple of weeks after an hour or two of riding, I was sort of getting ready to stand up or move around on the seat or just get off it. Whereas now, I mean, last week I was out for, I think, about 9 hours all day. Yeah, there was a few stops in that, but I never noticed the seat once. So yeah, the seat's really comfortable. I used to have an S1000XR before this, and very occasionally, like an hour or two into a ride, I used to get a bit of a dull ache in the back of my sort of shoulder blade. It was never enough to stop me riding or anything, but it was there nevertheless. Now, since riding this bike, I've never had that pain. And the only thing I can put it down to is the width of the bars, because the sort of distance you sat from your body to the bars feels very similar to that bike. So I suppose the other difference could be the vibes. People used to complain about the vibes on the XR. I never found that a problem. I don't really think it could have been that. I think the width of the bars is the only thing it could be, realistically. And yeah, like I said, I don't get that pain. So comfort wise, it's superb. I can ride this bike all day long, and I did last week, and I had absolutely no aches and pains. Superb. I've just got to touch on the MPG, because I'm really impressed with the MPG. I mean, that is generally what I'm getting on the average, 48 miles per gallon. So I get anything between sort of 47 and 53 really. You can see at the minute I'm getting 48. I'm on the country lanes. I reset it not that long ago, and that is my average. So generally a bit of motorway, hooning around the lanes, around town. I'm averaging 47, 48 miles per gallon, which is, I think, incredible. Now don't get me wrong, if you're getting a fistful all the time, that's going to come right down, but no, on average I'm getting around 200 miles out of a full tank. I know I could do much better, and if you've seen Sam V Bikes more recent video, he got 285 miles out of a tank. I don't know how the hell he did that, but yeah, it just goes to show you it can be really economical, can this bike. And for me, the average of 48 miles per gallon is just superb. Now I know it's daytime in a minute, and I'll probably do a separate video on the lights, but I've been super impressed with the lights. The combination of the, you know, the headlight, the main beam, and the cornering lights are absolutely superb. I have got the spotlights on here, and like I say, I'll probably do a separate video on all of that. But I didn't add them because the stock lights fell short. It was just, you know what it's like, you get a new bike and you want to buy all the toys for it. But yeah, the standard lights are superb. The cornering lights are brilliant. You know, that when you're tipping into a corner and normally you've got that blind spot down there where you can't quite see the surface, it just illuminates all of that. It's brilliant. On the subject of sort of night riding, I've got to mention the illuminated switchgear, which works brilliant. You can change the brightness of them, or you can turn that off. But I don't know why you would, because it's superb. Especially, you know, bikes these days have got that much tech on them, haven't they? They've got that many buttons and switches. It's just superb when they're illuminated. I don't know why more bikes don't do it. I know this isn't the only bike to do it, and I know it's not the first bike to do it. But it's the first bike I've had with illuminated switchgear, and I wish my other two bikes had it. It's superb. Next, I've got to mention that display. I love that display. It's obviously it's one of the bigger ones out there, but it doesn't look out of place, and it's just got the right amount of info on. It's you know, I can see everything I'd want to see at a glance. You know, what suspension I've got it set to, what heating I've got set on the seat and the gloves. You know, the ABS mode, what rider mode I'm in, all of that. Plus, obviously, the standard stuff, the speed, the gear selector, the revs. All of that I can see at a glance, and there's a lot of information, but it doesn't look cluttered. You know, it's really clean. The only slight negative I would say for it is it can switch automatically between light and dark, and I very quickly switched that just to dark because I found it was switching a little bit too often. You know, if you go into the shade of trees, it switch to dark. You come out the shade, it goes to light. Just doing it a little bit too much for me. But like I say, the solution is to just set it to whichever one's your preferred. I prefer the dark. I have it set to dark, and I think it's awesome. Yeah, I'm really impressed with it. Quick shifter and auto blipper work superb. I wouldn't say they work quite as well as my S1000XR I had before this, but it still works really well. And I don't know why I had this sort of preconceived idea that, you know, being a V20 it'd be quite lumpy, but no, it's really good. It's one of the better ones I've used. Don't get me wrong, every now and then you do get a clunky change, but never to the extreme where you're looking down thinking the gearbox had just jumped out the frame. No, it works well. And the other thing that works really well with it is it kind of doesn't matter what speed you're doing. You know, I know some quick shifters I've used, they work better the faster you're going. You know, the more on it you are, the better they work. That's not the case with this. This works really well when you just trundle in like this. As you can see, I'm not giving it any beans. Super smooth. Yeah, it works well. This might be just me, but the other thing with the quick shift and the auto blipper that I really like is it works well with the clutch. I know that sounds a silly thing to say, doesn't it? But every now and then I like to use the clutch. You know, it's all part of the engagement, isn't it? Riding a bike, using the clutch. And on some bikes with quick shifters and auto blippers, I sort of get the feeling when I'm using the clutch that the bike is kind of saying to you, what are you doing? Do you want me to do it or not? You know, you feel like you're interfering with what the bike's trying to do. Like I say, it's probably all in my head, but with this, the minute you grab that clutch, it's like the quick shift and the auto blipper don't exist. You know, which is great. It means when you want, like I say, that engagement, you still want to use the clutch. you've got the choice without having to turn it off in the menu. So yeah, quick shifter works brilliant in the auto dipper. Hey, not the place to make that move, was it? So I love the way this bike handles. And you know, I had an S1000XR before this, and that, as cheesy as it sounds, that bike felt like an extension of me. You know, I was so comfortable on it. Anyone coming from an S1000XR to this, it is such an easy transition. Yeah, it feels a little bit different. It carries its weight a little bit different, and obviously you've got the slightly bigger front wheel on it. But within a couple of hours of riding it, I feel as comfortable on this as I did after riding that for 4 years. You know, it's an easy transition if you're coming from that bike to this. The only thing I will say on the engine, and again this is me, this isn't a negative of the engine, but it took a little bit of getting used to for me, because I've come from inline fours. You know, I'm used to revvy engines, and I found the first few times going out on this bike I was bouncing off the rev limiter a bit. But now I've got used to, you know, that very different power delivery. You know, the power's much lower down. It's yeah, it's great. So the next thing I want to talk about on this bike is the build quality. I was quietly surprised. I don't know why. I had this preconceived idea that I didn't think it would be built all that well. You know, I thought it'd be a bit more plasticky, and you know, everything would rust, and I don't know why I thought that, but I did. And I've got to say, it's built every bit as well as the S1000XR I had before it. You know, it's solid. You know, everything feels solid, and I've had the bike to bits. I've had pretty much every panel off it when I was installing the Denali lights, and it is well made. I never pulled any bit of trim off and thought, oh, I'm going to break it. You know, it's yeah, it's put together well. So that's going to be it for this one. As you can probably tell, I love this bike. It is something else. I have no regrets over choosing this over the others. It ticks all the boxes, all my boxes. You know, I wanted a comfortable adventure bike that excites, and you know, this does that easily. It excites me to look at it, it excites me to ride it. It's super practical, it's comfortable, it does well on MPG, so far it's reliable. Yeah, superb. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this one. If you're new to the channel, welcome along. Please consider subscribing. You know, I plan to do lots of content on this bike. Any questions and queries, you know, leave them down below in the comment section. Hit the like, dislike button, any interaction, you know, I love it all. Thanks for watching. Bye.